Hello, my name is Mignona Cote. I am the Chief Security Officer at NetApp, and I am delighted to host this panel today. Today's topic is women cyber tech leaders, and we're going to talk about leading through technology. Wow, it is such a dynamic world right now. This is a very critical topic for us. We've got AI, we've got so much going on with data analytics. Earlier today, we were talking about the Security Exchange Commission disclosure on incidents. So it seems like every day something changes. We have female leaders as CIOs, CTOs, CISOs. Also, they're in the boardrooms. So we want to harness all this energy and this powerful technology group of women and figure out what are some of the things that we can do for profitability, being purposeful, and inclusion. So let me introduce the panel. So first we've got Aileen Alexander. I've known her for a few years. She is the CEO of Diversified Search, the largest women-founded executive search company worldwide. She was a managing partner at Korn Ferry, where I met her. I forgot what job I wanted to leave at that point. And she's also worked with the Department of Defense and House of Representatives in key security roles. We also have Tali Bray. She's the EVP for Technology, Diversity, Community, Sustainability at Wells Fargo. She has got over 25 years leading organizational change management. She's a champion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So she is our go-to person on how to navigate through all of what we're facing today. We've got Joyce Hunter, Executive Director for the Institute for Critical Infrastructure and Technology. She is the CEO of Vulcan Enterprises, which is strategic management and executive coaching. She was appointed by President Obama for a couple of CIO roles. Very fascinating. And then last, we've got Lauren Van Wzer. She's VP of Global Public Policy for Akamai. I love using Akamai, by the way, and she's the Assistant Director for Cybersecurity at the White House Office of, she was an Assistant Director for the Cybersecurity at the White House Office of Science and Technology, also appointed by President Obama. So let's get started. I'm going to start with my first question. And so the first question is, let's just start with the facts. Tech leadership and the rise of AI, we hear it everywhere. Cyber and the need for cybersecurity are at the forefront of companies' agendas, from the C-suite to the boardroom. And yet women tech leaders across the industry are underrepresented. Women are at 19.7% for CIOs, 15.8% for CISOs. What does that mean? Lauren, let's start with you and then move on to Joyce.
Thanks for that introduction, Mignona. Well, we're at a really exciting time in technology. I think a good point of reference is thinking about, they say in the next decade, there's going to be more technological change than the last 100 years, which is just an extraordinary statement. And we're really at a great inflection point for innovation. And so tech leadership is in really high demand. With increased digitalization, there's incredible demand for privacy and cybersecurity professionals related to data management. But we're at a tough point in terms of achieving parity. In terms of where we are, right now it's 29% women on boards in the Russell 3000 index, 77% women of color. And we just have some fresh numbers and just a 1% change from last year. So they're looking at gender parity on boards for 2024. And at the same time, there's a lot of interest in having technology executives on boards and C-suites. And unfortunately, right now, only 10% women in leadership in cybersecurity positions. And those are the most likely positions to go to boards or be in the C-suite. So I think we've got some exciting tailwinds in terms of what's happening in technology and the interest in the discipline that we all share. but some real challenges in terms of making progress. So the numbers are tough, and we just need to be more intentional about the policies we espouse to bring diversity in the C-suite and on boards.
Joyce?
As most people know, I'm a Trekkie. So I do not think we're going where others have not gone before. We need to really dig deep and look at going to HBCUs, looking at younger female organizations. We've got to go younger. A lot of people don't hear about cybersecurity, particularly in communities of color, until they're in college. No. We've got to go deeper and wider for those people that we're looking for. And we've got to take the technology out of it. A lot of cybersecurity is emotional intelligence. It's gut feeling. It's, how you react to other people. So I think, I truly believe that we should start looking at the humanities. Sociologists. I was a sociology major. And we should look at music majors. They are wonderful analysts because they know how to figure their heads around these complex musical symphonies. And that's what this is. Cybersecurity is a symphony. You have all kinds of musicians, you have all kinds of instruments, and the same thing goes for here. So I think we're just not looking in the right places, and we're not going deep enough.
Well, thanks both of you for your insight. I'm going to move on to AI design, use, and impact. Hot topic. So as we know, the design, use, and impact of AI all brings into focus women's expertise and issues on equity, employment, and empowerment. We know that AI can have diverse impacts on women, but can also allow us to reach more people and provide more career pathways. Tali, can you give us your perspective, and then Lauren will shift over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to start by saying, Joyce, +1 on everything you said. I'm also Team Star Trek. And I was also sociology in grad school and vocal performance and music undergrad. So I couldn't agree more. What I want to start with, I'll start with some data because I think it's important to sort of contextualize this. There was a report by the McKinsey Global Institute recently that came out, Generative AI and Future of the Work in America. And it stated that women are 1.5 times more likely to face occupational transitions than men by 2030. We also know that women and people of color are overrepresented in office support, right? Administrative jobs, which tend to be ripe for automation and AI, and that could shed 3.7 million additional jobs. And women and people of color are dominant in food service industry, which could shed more than 2 million jobs. So what we're seeing is that while women are outnumbered by men in the US workforce, women could be disproportionately impacted and affected by business adoption of generative AI. One recent analysis estimates that 79% of working women, that's nearly 59 million, are in occupations susceptible to disruption and automation compared to 58% of working men, and that was from the University of North Carolina. So, I think overall, interestingly, women in the US are less likely than men to say that technology has made a positive effect on society, and more likely to say that technology has had equally positive and negative impacts. Women are less likely than men to say they feel more excited than concerned about the increase of AI computer programs in daily life. And gender remains a factor about AI and technology's impact when accounting for other variables, such as respondents' political partisanship, education, race, and ethnicity. And this is from Pew Research Center. So I think a couple of key points here. Women have historically had more reservations about the impact of technology, inclusive of AI, on society as a whole. And this could potentially impact their willingness to major and pursue careers in STEM. So that's one thing the data points to. The acceleration of AI directly impacts the sectors where women and women of color in particular hold the majority of jobs. So I think to the earlier comment, what this really calls for is an increased need of non-traditional pathways to other roles, specifically in the tech sector. So women most impacted can be competitive in the labor market. And so whether we're talking about reaching out to schools that HBCUs, SSIs, whether we're talking about working with non-traditional, non-degree programs, internships. I agree that not only is there an opportunity to pull in women from STEM, but also to pull in women from non-traditional career backgrounds, whether degreed or undegreed, whether re-entering the career workforce, and look at skills and competencies, not necessarily specific experience. Because to your point, Joyce, whether we are talking about an analyst, there are computer science and CS degrees that are important, cyber experience is important, but there are also some of the softer, I would say humanities, not softer, because I think they're equally important and equally hard to master, but some of the skills that would also align well to this and bring in a more holistic approach. We talk about broadening the talent aperture. And I think this is one of the things that would be most appropriate to bringing in more women into this field, particularly during this time of what we think will be significant displacement.
Yeah, Tali, I couldn't agree with you more. We do need to look at ways to increase the pipeline. I mean, in cybersecurity, vacancies equal vulnerabilities, right? And so it's really important to look at how we could be more inclusive. In terms of artificial intelligence, I do have some concerns with generative AI and scraping all the data on the internet, that some biases that might hurt women are baked into the information, and have some concerns about that. But I also think there's the potential to spool off some of the rote activities associated with administrative type work, and maybe allow more freedom and flexibility to do more diverse job activities that could be exciting and offer new challenges. So, I think it's like many things, it's a two-sided coin, and we really need to make sure that we've got the policy guardrails in place to make sure that we yield the most benefits possible from the technology.
Well, so WCC has built a women's cyber governance collaborative, and many of you are working to build out diverse cybersecurity leaders with companies to promote this leadership. What can we do to bring more women and girls into and up into cybersecurity roles? So Joyce, I'm asking you this question, then the next question I'm going to ask specifically to Aileen.
Okay, I'll go back to my first statement. Women have to see other women that look like them. So we have to go younger. We have to get into the schools when they have these career days, when they have, I don't know if they still have show and tell. I've got grandchildren now, so I have no idea. But we've got to go where they are. So if they have a career day, we've got to get involved in the schools, elementary, middle school, and high school, and even in college. I'll tell you an interesting phenomenon that I witnessed this summer. So I have a nonprofit data science camp where I teach data science behind agriculture and athletics to underserved and underrepresented communities. When we got to the science, technology, engineering, agriculture, athletic and math camp, I had a group of 25 youth, and there were 5 young women. And after the first 2 days, they dropped out, all 5 of them. When I finally got in touch with 2, because the others ghosted me, I guess they didn't want to really admit, but when I got in touch with the 2, they said the boys were so loud. They did not grow up around the rambunctious. I had 2 sons, I have 4 grandsons. I'm used to it, doesn't bother me. But for some young women who have never, they only had sisters or women cousins, they're not used to the boisterousness of men. And also, it still is an old boys network, but when they get to college, secondary education, sometimes they get, sometimes the work groups, they don't include them. So, we've got to change the whole mindset of young men as well.
Wow. I think I've been trying that my whole life. I don't know how successful I've been. So Aileen, you're getting the question of all questions. I have heard this question in so many meetings. Will AI replace cybersecurity jobs?
I see Joyce starting to do what I'm doing, which is no. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge being on this panel with these incredible women and leaders, and there's so much great things that have been said. I mean, first of all, Lauren setting the stage in terms of what's happening in technology, in terms of the velocity and the pace and the intensity, which can be scary, but can also be exciting and exhilarating. And then Joyce and Tali, also contextualizing, but beginning to tee up where I'd like to go, which is the human element, which I don't want us to forget about, and these alternative paths as well. So thank you for setting the stage, and shout out to Edie and Gwen, because they always say measure what matters, and that's what WBC brings to all of us. And we're talking technology and cyber, but we also know those statistics aren't far off from what we're seeing across the C-suite and in the senior ranks. Yes, we've made progress in the boardroom, but there's more to be done. So want to just give a shout out to everyone there. And I promise you, Mignona, I'm not trying to evade the question. So no, listen, I think, AI, I always tease that I can spell AI. There's a lot. There can be positives, as Lauren said. There also are watch outs in terms of AI and what it means. Of course, people look at it from how it's going to automate or create efficiencies and make us more effective. But again, I'm going to go back to what I said just a minute ago, is it cannot replace the human element. And when we think about what's needed in cybersecurity, when you think about, you said this, Tali, contextual understanding, the adaptability aspect, the ability to have relationships across your enterprise and with multitudes of constituencies outside of your organization, that is the human side. That's what opens up the aperture. That's what creates pathways. And we've got to get more creative there. So short answer, Mignona, I don't think it's going to replace some, certain jobs. Yes, maybe, but there's going to be other jobs that are created. And we're going to double click on, again, that human side. The other thing is I look at all technology leaders and all cyber leaders as leaders. You are leaders, and what you do for the business, the fundamentals of inspiring people, creating a vision, building teams, growing and curating and developing those teams so that all can leverage their skills and their lived experiences, and creating conditions for trust. Colin Powell, who I'm former military, and he has, check it out at the National Press Club. If you look online, you'll find it on YouTube. There's a 2.5-minute clip that's extremely inspirational around what is a leadership's responsibility, and it's to create the conditions for trust. So again, AI's, again, all the technicians out there might correct me. I'm sure there's some technical things that AI can assist with, but to me, we need humans here. So that's my answer.
I can sleep tonight.
That was the goal.
Replaced by AI. Well, so this brings me into another question. A lot of us talk about why women don't rise up in tech career centers around culture, but there's also discussions of work-life balance and working from home. What women really need is fluidity. What does this really mean? And so Tali, we'll start with you, and then Lauren and Aileen, looking at your role and what you do, give us some feedback as well on this. We think we would love to hear from you. So Tali?
Thanks. So I think it's important to remind ourselves about what the drivers are for women in the workforce. And this is, a generalization, but traditionally, access to childcare, market wage, and flexibility. And the pandemic was really a catalyst for those needs, especially as women were sort of bouncing back into, or women are bouncing back into the workforce. So, for instance, jobs by and large became more flexible, allowing telecommuting and home-based work to be more prevalent, and that really helped improve access to childcare. So we see that in a childcare context, which often requires fluid scheduling. Telecommuting grew more commonplace, home-based work allowed for more flexible hours, and beyond the hiring practices that can encourage sort of this fluidity. enable women to make these transitions, then I would say that there are a couple of things that are really important fluidity. Number one, the need for affordable childcare. And not to turn this into a political conversation, but I do think that when we talk about really shifting the dynamic and bringing women into the labor force, and we look at some of the attrition levels that we are seeing of women in the workforce right now across all industries, which candidly are concerning, I do think that affordable childcare remains a really important aspect of that. I think the other thing, and this was commented on by Aileen, trust, workplace culture, right? An aspect of this is that everyone is responsible, but particularly managers, to set the tone that employees follow. And to that end, managers of all gender identities can make or break opportunities for women on their team. I think to Joyce's comment about trying to ensure that boys, men, are understanding about creating inclusive spaces, that really comes in place from a manager in the workplace. So to think really about fluidity, it doesn't just refer to flexible benefits or company may provide, childcare. It really talks about, I think, culturally meeting people where they are and creating a space that allows people to show up in a context that works for them, and gender roles being what they are. And we still see the vestigial, remnants of very specific gender roles. The need for fluidity, I think, falls more heavily on women in the workforce, and particularly women re-entering the workforce. So I think it's a cultural aspect that's really important, and there's the technology to support it. The one final thing I would say, and this isn't directly a question or a response to the question, but I also think it's really important that as we're having this conversation, we're also thinking about, as Gen AI starts to replace many of the interactions that we have, the ability to have access to the internet will become even more critical and important. So I just want to point out also that it's really essential that we think about internet access as a basic right as we start to see more and more transactions, experiences shifting into the digital space, and that's going to accelerate tremendously with Gen AI.
Well, great, Tali. I agree with so much of what you said, and really glad that you emphasized the connectivity point. And with all the investment in broadband infrastructure, I think there's going to be a point a couple of years from now when that infrastructure is in place, and we have a lot more opportunity to bring jobs to remote areas, rural areas, areas that are currently underserved by broadband infrastructure today. And I think we need to think about putting the structures in place so those people can get remote jobs from those locations. I think women in the workplace really want flexibility. The World Economic Forum released a study last year that said women are much more likely to leave a workplace if they find that it is inflexible. And so I think it's important and incumbent upon companies to look at workforce policies in terms of flexibility. I've got some concerns about what's going to happen with the cyber diversity pipeline with very stringent return to work policies. I'm fortunate at Akamai, we're nearly 100% remote workforce by choice. All employees, except for those in our network operating control center, can decide whether or not they want to work remotely. And I think that was a very strategic decision. I think it's great for talent retention and talent attraction. And I think more companies need to be thinking this way. How can we be flexible? We found in the pandemic that many people could do their jobs remotely, and maybe it's core hours in the office and more flexibility around those core hours to be outside the office. But we need to look through these workforce policies through that lens.
Thank you. So Aileen?
I got to follow Tali and Lauren. I mean, they said just great stuff. So I'll just amplify a lot of what has been said. I mean, first of all, I'm a product in terms of my business career of working on teams and in an industry that has allowed for, at least in the roles that I've been, for flexibility and autonomy, which supported me as a working mom here. And so again, Lauren, to your point, and Tali's, for me, it's never been about, work-life balance, but more around that work-life integration. And so, again, we're seeing that. I think So that's key. I think the other piece, when I think about that fluidity, is around being more open and accepting of nonlinear paths. And nonlinear paths being whether you've moved across industries or you've moved across functions or you've worked for a public company or perhaps you're in an entrepreneurial, perhaps you needed to hit the pause button and care for an ailing parent or something personal, where in my industry a few years back, again, we double click on that, right? Where again, we just talked about the human element just a bit ago. And that's part of life is what's happening in your life, right? And so I think we've made progress there, but there's still more work to be done. And it's incumbent for all leaders to be setting that tone. It's how they show up. And it's also, again, I go back to the conditions that they're setting within the workplace.
Well, that's going to bring us to another question. What is your call to action for companies and organizations to ensure diverse tech leadership? This is for all of you. So Lauren, well, Joyce, we'll start with you first.
I'm going to say a whole lot of, I guess, colloquialisms. The first is to go where you've not gone before. Junior colleges, liberal arts majors, music majors, go down the path less traveled. Go to those places where you were wondering. Ask somebody. If you are not sure, it's no harm in saying, I don't know where to go to get some of these new professionals, so to speak. Look inside, to thine own self be true. You can actually look inside your organization, and there are people there who are biting at the bit for someone to ask them to step up to the plate. Are you interested in taking another path? Just do it.
Thank you. So Tali.
Okay. I'm trying to come up with something to keep up with Joyce, but my brain is a blank. I'm like, oh man, what do I have? I have a Bob Ross bobblehead in front of me. I don't know. That probably doesn't count. So, I want to take sort of the complement to what Joyce was talking about. There's talent acquisition, and we all know right now that from a talent acquisition perspective, people go with who they know. Right? People are in community with people that look like them. So you got to get in community with people that don't look like you. If you are showing up to events and you are not slightly uncomfortable, then maybe you're not in the right events to think about diversifying your pipeline and to think about how you want to show up and where you want to be. And, I think that that's really critical from a talent acquisition perspective, because we have heard too many times, we just can't find the talent. Talent doesn't exist. The talent 100% guaranteed does exist. You are not in community and you're not in spaces to build that pipeline. And pipeline takes time and trust. You don't just show up at an event and say, hey, come work for me. People want to know who you are, what you are, and your culture. So I want to talk about culture for just a moment, because I think that is one of the most important, if not the most important thing for retaining diverse talent. And by diverse, I mean underrepresented, segments and populations from a racial ethnic perspective, from a gender perspective, from a, gender identity, sexual orientation perspective. We tend to focus so much on talent acquisition, and we bring people in, and we are finding, the data shows us, this is not unique to financial services, that early talent has very high attrition rates in the first year if you do not have a culture that truly embraces a sense of belonging, right? And truly understands the value of being able to participate as your authentic self. Now, there's a ton of question right now about the difference between, showing up as your best self versus your authentic whole self. But putting that aside, I think one of the most important things we can do is really focus on mobility, mentorship, sponsorship programs. I think we need to be really intentional about onboarding when we bring people into our companies, particularly young people. What are we doing to demonstrate our culture? How are we integrating them into the culture? And how do we help them understand what career path and trajectories look like? To the point, we, I'll use Wells as an example. We have an incredible population of talented, ambitious, generally young people in our branches and call centers. This is an incredible pipeline for talent that can move into analytics roles, cybersecurity roles. So it is that cultural piece that is going to, I think, really allow companies to make that shift to truly embracing and supporting underrepresented talent.
So we've got a couple more minutes. So Aileen?
I'll be quick because so much has been said, and I love just Joyce when you just did just do it. So I'm thinking, you got the Nike commercial there, and Tali just hitting what goes beyond the talent acquisition piece. So I'm simply going to say become a learn-it-all for all these things that we're raising here. If you're in a leadership role, become a learn-it-all, and becoming a learn-it-all means also being willing to unlearn. And by unlearning, you're going to start to really meet people where they are. You're going to unlearn the way you've been doing talent acquisition or you've been doing onboarding. So we'll leave you with that, because I know we've got about 30 seconds here. Joyce.
So Lauren, wrap us up.
Well, I think everyone here has given us, if we put it all together, a great recipe for success or for going forward. And it's been a pleasure to be on the panel. And I think we need to look for policies that embrace people from junior to senior levels to deal with the attrition issues that Tali mentioned, and make pathways, foster intentional pathways for women to lead at all levels in the organization, and make things flexible for their daily lives as well.
Well, I want to thank all of you for joining this fabulous panel, and this concludes our Leading Through Technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you. Live
Bye-bye.
long and prosper.